Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for Spirit, the stimulating program initiative for retirees that inspires thought. I'm Rabbi Judy Steinig, Director of Community Programs for the Orthodox Union, and it's my honor to coordinate and host this program. The OU created Spirit several years ago as an on-site program, and now we're happy to present it in a virtual setting for baby boomers, active retirees, not yet retirees, empty nesters, sandwich generation parents, and seniors, all of whom are looking for opportunities for spiritual, physical, educational, and intellectual growth. Since all of us are still sheltering in because of the pandemic, Spirit is the perfect way for us to engage in a virtual setting. Today's session is entitled Sharing Our Past with Our Future, exploring the value of sharing your story with next generations. We will be discussing this in coordination with the new OU initiative and how you can be involved. It is my personal honor and privilege to introduce our speaker, Rabbi Moshe Hauer, who is now Executive Vice President of the Orthodox Union. Rabbi Hauer has joined the OU at a very challenging time and has had to deal with many, many issues of the pandemic. Yet his guidance has always been phenomenal. We truly appreciate the direction he is giving every one of us and look forward, Be'ezras Hashem, to a very strong future. We are so happy to welcome Rabbi Hauer to the Spirit Forum and appreciate him taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to speak with us today. It's my pleasure and honor to turn the forum over to him now. Thank you, Rabbi Hauer.
Thank you very, very much. I want to begin by expressing my own appreciation, tremendous appreciation to Rabbi Judy Steinig for initiating and leading this program, which is something very, very valuable, very important, very high on our priority list, frankly, when we every one of us as individuals and certainly organizationally as well, we have to always try to identify the need that's important, that's there to be filled. And without any question, there's a significant recognition that with all the limitations of this time specifically, the extra caution which is being prudently exercised by the population to which the Spirit program is targeted is one that is significant. It's a significant challenge, and one that we wanted to be able to address. And Rabbi Steinig with the Spirit program is doing something meaningful for a very, very important part of our population. It's a privilege for me to be able to spend some time with you today and to be able to see the work of the program firsthand. So I'm going to be sharing a few thoughts with you about this idea of sharing the past with the future. The value of each and every one of us, of each and every one of you, sharing your story. You may be familiar that later in the Torah, towards the end of the Torah, we're instructed, Zachor Yemos Olam Binu Shnos Dor Vador. Remember the days of yore, consider the years of generation and generation. Sha'alavicha v'yagedcha zekenecha v'yomru lach. Inquire of your father, and they will tell you, of your elders, and they will inform you. The Torah mandates, teaches us to consider, one might say, history, but it makes it more personal. It doesn't just speak about Yemos Olam, about the days and the history of the world. Sh'alavicha v'yagedcha zekenecha v'yomru lach. It teaches us to establish a personal connection with history. I think it's Rabbi Sachs who likes to make the point that in the English words, history is his story, whereas memory begins with me with the letters of me, my own. When the Torah instructs us and says, Sh'alavicha v'yagedcha zekenecha v'yomru lach, it's telling us, get to know your story. Ask your father, ask your elders, ask your mother, learn the story of your past. If you have the opportunity to be able to do so, to be able to turn to those who came before you to learn, that's fantastic. And we must remember, while this is a value that's sometimes focused on in terms of the personal story, the personal past history, to ask your father, to ask your grandfather. Many of us would have the privilege of being able to convey a story to our own future generations. But the truth is that there's so much that can be taught by elders to those who come after them based on life experience that doesn't even need to limit itself to the individual, to the world of connection. There's a fascinating passage in the Gemara, in the Talmud and Maseches Kiddushin, on Daf Lamed Gimel, where the Gemara describes, it's generally discussing the sugya, the discussion about honor for parents and for teachers. And the Gemara says that Rav Yochanan havikoi mikame save de armoi. Rav Yochanan would stand up for older people who weren't of the Jewish people, Arameans, save de armoi. And he explained that the grounds for his respect, they weren't his teachers in the simple sense, they weren't his parents or grandparents, but Amar, he said, Kama harpatke adu alayu dahani. He said, with respect, he said, how many experiences have these people had in their lives? Rashi translates when it's this unusual word, harpatke. Rashi says, mikraos vitsaros. They went through many events, many challenges. V'ra'u nisim, harbe umosim. They saw many miracles, many wonders. Really, are we sure that this person experienced something which was miraculous in so to speak, in the biblical sense? But everybody in their life goes through difficulties and challenges, and they rise above those challenges. That's the miraculous. In a sense, that's the miraculous. And what this passage in the Gemara is teaching is that there's a great respect which we need to have for life experience. Life experience is real. Life experience is giving us subsequently the instruction about how to actualize life, how to move forward. I want to just try to make the case for this. And when I'm making this case to you, I'm making the case for you, for each and every one of you, for each and every one of us to recognize that within ourselves, within our lives, there is that life experience that is so worth sharing, that is something of value. We sometimes may minimize it, may not consider it to be significant. Who would be interested in the stories of our lives? What is there really to be shared? What is there to learn? But it is in this context that I want to try to make the case for the importance of recognizing the value of that, of being willing to share it, of making something of an effort to be able to share that story. You know that in the Medrash, it's a Medrash Tanchuma. The Medrash Tanchuma teaches a very interesting pattern, a pattern which we have in our own history. And that is that it says that the early ones, Rishonim, the early ones, they called the names of their children Al Shem HaMa'ura, based on the event that they were going through at the time. If you look in the Torah, biblical names are being assigned right and left to people. Reuven was called Reuven because of what Leah observed. Hashem has seen my anguish. Now my husband will love me. There was an event, an experience they were having at the time. And that experience informed how they named the child. Achronim korim al shem harishonim, the Medrash says. Later generations, they don't look at the event that they're experiencing now to give the name. Instead, they look back at those who came before them. They understand that who they are, in a significant sense, is formed and is molded by those who came before. We can look, in a certain sense, at heredity, and we can look at environment. We can look at our current situation, or we could look at where we come from. And the choice, the traditional choice in the way we name our children is to help give them an identity by the people who they came from. And that's not just a matter of DNA. It's a matter of the life experience of those people that is formative for us, that is informative to us, and that helps us really to have a framework to live life. You know, one of the things which we worry about, here we are, we're on a Zoom class, a Zoom call, a Zoom get together, and we say, wow, it's an amazing thing. And it truly is an amazing thing. It truly is an amazing thing that we're able to get together, so many people, virtually. So is anybody therefore ready to give up on getting together with human contact? For one, I am not. And it's such a fascinating thing how people talk about, how much we've seen from this experience, from this pandemic experience, of the ability to do things virtually. Some businesses are ready to give up their office space and say, hey, we don't have to be together. We're able to just do things electronically. Now, thank God there is a lot that we're able to do, and it's given us many, many tools for getting through and growing through a situation like this. Those tools have allowed organizations, businesses to be able to continue, in certain times even to be able to thrive. But the need for human contact and what is benefited from when we have direct human contact is not something to be underestimated. There's a reason why in normal times, airplanes are filled with people who travel across the country, sometimes across the world, to sit together in a 2-hour meeting, which they also could have done by Zoom, which they also could have done by phone, but they understand the significance of human relationships. People sometimes socialize or they date via the internet, by FaceTime and by Skype and by Zoom. And it's a tricky game because it's one thing when we're far away, there's something else to the genuine being together, the human contact. And it's something which is so valuable. And for our subject of sharing the past with the future, the person who we are, the person who we have a chance to sit with, that conveyance of reality, of the reality of our life, of having it brought together. There's a simple and a beautiful idea that I like to share, because I think it's very real and very, very instructive for us. It's during this time of year, really from Pesach all the way till Rosh Hashanah, that there's a custom, a beautiful custom, that every week we study a perek, a chapter from Pirkei Avot, from the chapters of the fathers. Who are the fathers of Pirkei Avot? Why is it called that? It's not the Avot of the Chumash, it's not Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who are hardly mentioned throughout. When we look at it, we really see that it's the teachers of the generations who are listed in the beginning of Pirkei Avot, where we're taught about who were the major personalities in giving over the Masorah, the traditions of the Jewish people. Now, these people were rabbis, and they were typically known as not avot, not as fathers, but as rabbis. And yet here, in this context, we call it the chapters of the fathers, not the chapters of the teachers. Why is that? And I think that part of the answer to that is that there are two modes of teaching. There are two ways in which we teach. Sometimes we teach texts. We study things. We look at human experience in terms of, not human experience, but scientific experience. We'll look at items empirically, how processes go. We learn over there. We learn from a book. We learn from an experiment, from observing something. And then there's learning, which comes not from a text, but from how all the knowledge which the person has is actualized in how they live their life. Learning from example, learning from the experience, from the live experience of people. Every teacher teaches text, and every teacher is also a role model. Every parent is a role model, and they may also study texts with their children. They may study the Parsha, they may study Mishnah, they may study all kinds of things, science and literature with their children. But the primary modality of a teacher is to teach texts and to teach information. And the primary modality of a parent is to teach by example, to teach by their life experience, to teach by how they live life, how they experience life, how they interact as a regular person going through life day by day. Pirkei Avot are the teachings of life lived. They're not teachings of text in the classic sense. It teaches us how to be deliberate, how to be patient, what our house should look like, what our attitude towards study and wisdom should be, what our attitude towards the sages should be. The lessons of Pirkei Avot are about how life is lived. And those are lessons that each and every one of us, each and every one of you, have the ability to impart significantly by sharing, by taking the time to share your story. Your kids, your grandchildren, the children and grandchildren of others, younger generations, they have access to all the information in the world. With machines like the one that you're participating in this class on, with a little computer, they can access so many times more what we were able to access when we just went to a library to take out a book. We had to look all over the place till we found it. Maybe the book was out and we wouldn't even find it after we had identified the book that we're supposed to look for it for. Today, with a couple of keystrokes, all the information in the world is available, but it's not nearly the same as the life experience. Our sages taught us, Gadol shimusho yoser milimudo, the opportunity to interact with a person, to interact with a teacher, to interact with a parent, and to see how they're living their life is so much more than the specific lessons, the specific teachings, the specific texts that they might be able otherwise to teach. It's a great thing for us to be able to share. I want to, if I can do a little show and tell today, I wanted to share with you a few of literally my most precious possessions. This is a book called Korot Beitenu, the story of our family, which was one of my first cousins put it together about the story of his family, which was significantly the story of our family as well. It goes back for generations. Has beautiful things in there. He did the research, he did the interviews, and he committed it to writing. And it became a treasure for our family. Another one, same thing, Chamisha Dorot, 5 generations, is by a different side of the family, a different book lit, telling the family story from a different side of the family. And when you read these stories, when I read these stories, I not only learn intricate details about the past history of our family, but in a certain sense, what we do is we find ourselves in that story. We find ourselves in that story. Can I share with you just a little personal anecdote, which is in that category? So, my name is Moshe Hauer. My name is Moshe ben Binyamin. Ben Moshe ben Binyamin. Going back many generations, that was the father and son name. Obviously, I never met my grandfather. My father never met his grandfather. Thank God we broke the streak. I have a grandson whose name is Binyamin, but there's a generation in between because thank God our children did get to meet their grandfather, did get to meet and to know and to gain from their grandparents. I read in one of these books a story, and the story was that not my grandfather, but my great-grandfather, whose name was Binyamin, he came to the town in Romania where the family settled, called Grossvardein. And when he came to the town, it was a town of Misnagdim, of non-Hasidic Jews. And he had a little bit of an inclination to Hasidus. And he, on the first night of Pesach, after Mariv, in the regular shul, he gathered together a few people who it would have fit with their custom to say Hallel in shul on the night of Pesach. As you know, some have the custom, and specifically as well, it's a custom in Eretz Yisrael, widespread, and it's a minhag Hasidim as well that's adopted. It's a big discussion in early sources to say Hallel in shul on the night of Pesach, the only night when we would say Hallel formally, even aside from the Hallel that we say at home as the Seder is celebrated. And the story, the way it's written in the book, was that one of the members of the community was so upset with this deviation that they went to the head of the Bezdin, of the Beit Din in the city, and they complained to him that this person came and he's introducing this custom of saying Hallel in shul, and they lodged it as a major complaint. And the head of the Bezdin's response was, really? Somebody did that? Somebody started a minyan to say Hallel in shul on the night of Pesach? And the person said, yes. And the rabbi said, oh, I wish somebody would have told me. I would have been able to join. So that it was a story in the book, a story about some of what he went ahead and built in that town, in that city. So it's a charming story, and it's a nice story to read. But I found it especially poignant because a couple of decades ago, in the shul where I had the privilege to serve as the rabbi, we actually moved. We started in one place, and then we moved and joined with another shul, and we sort of created the minhagim of the shul based on the two shuls that preceded it. And one of the minhagim that we created, which wasn't really part of it, was something that I had wanted to do, which was that after Mariv, on the first nights of Pesach, that when davening, 5 minutes after davening ended, for the tzibur, for those who had it as their custom, we would say Hallel together in shul. And it was a very special thing for me, remains a very special thing for me and for my family. And I did this without knowing the story about my great-grandfather. But, those patterns become part of ourselves, part of who we are, the interests, the passions, the things which are important, we convey to our children. And when we just leave it as something which is floating around, and we don't record it, we don't make it something specific, hard and fast, it can get lost. It can get significantly lost, and a very big piece can be missing. Another one of my treasured items is this is a CD of my father's testimony for Yad Vashem. My father was a Holocaust survivor, and he told the story of his life. These testimonies are not just the stories of the tragedy and of the Holocaust itself, but the story of before, the story of during, and the story of after. And my father, Zechreno Livracha, did not always share, personal stories from difficult times so easily, personally. Wasn't the easiest thing for him to do. On certain special occasions, and specifically and especially for the Yad Vashem testimony, he did, and we have it, and we treasure it. It's part of ourselves. It's part of who we are. It's not history, it's memory. It's not a story of somebody else. It becomes part of ourselves. And it's something which is treasured and will continue to be treasured. Sharing the past with the future, it's a big deal. There's a beautiful story that's told in the Gemara. It's a story, famous story. It's a story of Choni HaMa'agel, a unique personality which we have really just a few stories about. He was a great sage, but we don't have so many of his Talmudic teachings. But again, in this case, we have stories. And one of the stories of Choni HaMa'agel goes as follows. Rav Yochanan said that Kol Yomov Shel Oso Tzadik Hayom Mitztar Al Mikrazeh. Throughout the lifetime of Choni HaMa'agel, he struggled with a specific verse. And the verse was one which we say each Shabbos when we bench. V'shuv Hashem Ashivas Tzion Hayinu Kecholmin. when Hashem will return, bring back the captives, bring us back to return to Zion, we would be, or we were, like dreamers. And he said that seems kind of strange because we were away for 70 years. Is it possible for somebody to go through 70 years of dreaming? Mi'ika denayim shivin shnin bechelma. Can somebody have 70 years of slumber with associated dreams? That was his question. And the Gemara says in its Agadaic fashion, Yumachad hava'azal ba'urcha. One day he was walking down a street and he saw a man, and the man was planting a charuv. He was planting a carob tree. Now, carob trees evidently take a very long time till they mature, until they produce fruit. Amar lei, so he said to him, Hai ad kama shnin toim. Can you tell me how many years is it going to take for this carob tree to produce fruit? Amar lei, he said, ad shivin shnin, it'll take 70 years. So Choni HaMagal said, tell me something. Do you think you're going to live 70 years? Do you think you're going to live to be able to benefit from the fruit of these trees, of this tree? Amar lei, and the man responded, and he said, Haigavra alma b'charuva ashkachte, ki echid shasli li avhasi, shasli nami liberoi. I found a world with carob trees. Who planted them? My forefathers planted them for me. And the same way they planted them for me, even though they wouldn't be able to benefit from its fruit. They wouldn't live 70 years to benefit from its fruit. They planted it for me. I'm going to plant for those who follow me, for future generations. That's what he said. I'm not living just for the present. I'm here because of the past. And so I'm going to return the favor. I'm going to, as the expression is used today, I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to do a similar investment for the sake of the future. Beautiful thought, beautiful idea. And the Gemara continues the story. It's a rich story. It's a rich story with so much to learn from it. But listen to what happens. So that the Gemara says that Choni sat down to eat something and suddenly became very sleepy, and he fell asleep, and something grew around him, shielded him so nobody saw him, and he slept there for 70 years. And then he woke up. And when he woke up, he came to, and he sees what appears to be the same man picking carobs from a mature carob tree. And he says to him, excuse me, Atu de Shatalte? Are you the fellow who planted this tree? You look exactly like the fellow who I saw before planting this tree, but I saw it as a seed going into the ground. Are you the person who planted the tree? And he said, no, I'm not. I'm the grandson of the person who planted this tree. And Choni HaMaagel suddenly realized that he had slept for 70 years. He had slept for 70 years. The donkey that he had been riding and was also there hidden from sight when Choni fell asleep had already litters of descendants and descendants, a whole flock that surrounded him. So he learned the lesson. A person could sleep for 70 years. A person could dream for 70 years. So just a cute story that he fell asleep and he was taught that lesson through there. You see a dream of 70 years. What it means is it's a dream for the future. Choni HaMaagel didn't understand why this person was planting a tree that he would never benefit from. But the answer to Choni HaMaagel was, I'm not planting it for myself. I'm thinking ahead. 70 years is a lifetime. And that lifetime can be spent dreaming, not just about the present, not just living about the present, but thinking about where it's going to go, about the future, living for that future to some extent, planting for that future. We have so much to plant and to give to that future. But the Talmudic story isn't over. It's not over. The Talmudic story continues, and Choni HaMaagel comes home. And it's a tragic story. The Talmud says he comes home and they didn't recognize him. he saw people that looked like his children, but it wasn't his children. They weren't his children. They were his children's grandchildren who had the same resemblance, but they didn't recognize him. They thought that he was gone, and he wasn't recognized and accepted at home. He went to the Beit Midrash, he went to the house of study, and he sat in there on a study session, and someone said, you know, this is as clear to us as in the days of Choni HaMa'agel. And Choni HaMa'agel cleared his throat, and he said, you know, I'm Choni HaMa'agel. And they laughed him out of the Beit Midrash. What? Choni HaMa'agel hasn't been around for generations. And he ended up, Choni HaMa'agel, sad, depressed, and he said a line, tragic line. He said, O chavrusa, O misusa, without connection, without friendship, you know, is life worth living? Now, one suspects, when one reads this passage in the Talmud, that if Choni HaMa'agel had understood earlier in his life that when you live 70 years, you're dreaming 70 years. And you're living because you want to be another step towards a future. If Choni HaMa'agel would have naturally and comfortably been planting trees that wouldn't be for the present, wouldn't be for him, but would be for the future, would be something that only, again, future generations would be able to benefit from. So then when he would have walked in on his grandchildren, when he would have walked in on the students who weren't related to him, but had gained from his teaching, they wouldn't have looked at him strangely and said, who are you? We don't know you. No. If he had lived and dreamed and planned for them, for that future, if he had communicated with that future, there wouldn't have been a gap. There wouldn't have been such a separation between one and the next, that Choni walked in and they said, who are you? When we share the past, our own past, with the future, when we choose to commit the story of our past, whether to writing, whether to a recording, whether to be interviewed, to invite, to allow someone, whether someone in our own family, if we're blessed to have someone who's there who would want to do it, or anyone, to take down our story, to write it, to record it, to make something of it. What we're doing is sharing the past with the future. We're opening up the communication between the past and the future. We're making it so that our lives will be able to speak, to communicate, to share, not just with those who shared our experience in actuality, but by sharing our experience with the future, we build a bridge, we build a connection. We make that story able to be heard and to be able to be understood. We give that critical gift of the future to learn from the experience of the past, from our own schools of hard knocks, what we went through, what we learned and experienced, which is often so different than what our children and grandchildren and the young people today experience. The world has changed so much. Our life experience is so much different than theirs. We don't have to share it in a condescending way, saying, you have no idea. But we just share, we give over. And from those experiences, from what we saw, from the people we saw, from the experiences that we went through, we give some of our most fundamental teachings, Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the fathers, the chapters of the mothers, the story of not specific textual teaching, which they can get plenty without us, but the life experience which they can only get from us. A life experience which is a rich trove of wisdom to learn from, like Rav Yochanan, who stood up for the elders who weren't even from his community because of the life experience that they represented. The fact that it's their story, the fact that it's Avicha, Zekenecha, the stories of our own, the people who came before us that are formative, that we may come to recognize in our own lives, that they will come to recognize what's part of them that they got from us, from those who came before them, from previous generations, the values that became part of the DNA that's given over and that's shared. And finally, and ultimately, to bridge the gap, to bring people together. One of the charges that we've all had in this time is figuring out how we can connect. When we're not physically in the same place, we figure out how we can connect with a technology or something like that. But there's another challenge of connecting the past to the future, connecting one generation to the other. And a great way to do that is not just by talking about what's going on today, but sharing what went on yesterday, sharing what was the story of our lives that brought us to be here, that made us who we are, the lessons we learned from it, the experiences that formed us. They really, really are a magnificent method of connection. That's what I wanted to share with you. And in the hope that from this discussion, maybe some of you will be encouraged and stimulated to share your story, to share your past with our future. Thank you very much.
Rabbi Hauer, thank you so very much for your inspiring words, for the encouragement of sharing the past. We appreciate you spending all of your time with us. Now, for everyone else, in conjunction with what Rabbi Hauer spoke about, I want to let you know that the OU is in the process now of launching a program, and you're actually going to be getting an email about it in 20 minutes. But I'll just so you'll know what it's about. It's a program called Perfect Pairs. And in this program, we will be matching, for those who sign up for it, we'll be matching a mature adult, that's all of us, with a teen with some similar interests to build a friendship and to share your living legacy of wisdom, values, humor, experiences. This is something we want to do this summer because we know so many of our teens are not having the summer that they probably wanted. So this is a program that we're starting now. As I said, you'll be getting an email about it by around noontime, and with a sign up so that if you can be, you can click on it, sign it up, and be part of the program. For anybody that is a member of the sandwich generation and you, with God's help, have older parents or other relatives, you can, with their permission, sign them up as well. And in terms of the interactions, they will be very safe. You can do it through the telephone, through WhatsApp, FaceTime, however you are comfortable to interact with the teen, that is how it can be done. And it's a wonderful way to share your life and your values and everything about yourself with another person. So this is a program that we're launching now from Spirit and through NCSY, and we hope that everybody here will be involved with this. As I said, look for your emails in about 20 minutes. Of course, later on today or early tomorrow, you will be getting a recording of today's program with Rabbi Hauer. You don't have to ask me for it. You're going to get it automatically. Everyone who registers gets the recording. So in the future, whether you're able to attend, whether you're not, we understand that Baruch Hashem, we have people participating in this program from all over the world, and they're not always able to participate live, but there's always the recording so they can do it later. The one thing I do want to tell you, for anybody that registered for this past Tuesday cybersecurity program, that was a pre-recording, we didn't do it live. Please watch that program by tomorrow before Shabbos, because that will be taken offline. There are some, our security department at the OU said we only had a limited access to it. So you have it on demand anytime until before Shabbos, and then it's going away. So it had very, very important information. So I hope everybody will have a chance to look at it. All of our other programs are always available on demand. That was just one unique one. Again, I want to thank our partnering synagogues who are helping us to spread the word about this program. If your shul is not in the list of partnering synagogues that you get in your emails, please talk to your rabbi or president. It's very easy to get involved. They just have to contact me, and we are happy to have them promote the program as well. Next week, we will be having another session in seated yoga. That's on Tuesday. And then a special Shavas B'Tammuz program with OU Senior Managing Director Stephen Weil on Thursday. So watch your emails for registration information. Have a great day, everybody. Have a good Shabbos. Be safe and healthy, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Again, thank you so much, Rabbi Hauer.
Be well.